So we're breaking it down with the symbolism of it, not necessarily just the story for the story's sake. So this week we're going to start. I was thinking about this while Riley and I were in Cleveland about just practice, and I think this is something that it's nice that we can reflect on it now, but also because remember we want this to be about changing who we are as we go through the study of it, which is why it's really pertinent for us to think about these things in relation to those being aspects of ourselves, not something outside of ourselves. So when we think of sati, we think of that as our intelligence, right? So sati is that relative intelligence that where we have the ability to quote information. We have the ability to discuss facts, but we don't have that deep knowledge, that intuitive knowledge. So so any of these characters, as we discuss them, think about it within yourself, not outside of yourself. And that will make the story much more personal to you and our evolution as we go through the study. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and then I just want you to answer based on what your experience with your practice has been up to this point. So since doing your practice, question number 1, are you happier? Because if we remember when we talked about that shraddha, right, one of the 6 virtues is that we want to cultivate faith in our practice because that will make us keep going back to it. So if you're happier, how are you happier?
Start.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it.
I was trying to read that look. The next question is, are you more compassionate? And how are you more compassionate? If I'm going too fast, just let me know and I can always slow down. Has your practice transformed you? And is it continuing to change you?
Could you repeat that?
Mm-hmm. Has your practice transformed you? And is it continuing to change you? How much mastery have you gained over your thoughts and emotions during your practice time and throughout the day?
Can you repeat that, please?
Mm-hmm. How much mastery have you gained over your thoughts during your practice time, your thoughts and emotions during your practice time, and then throughout the day? We can be a saint for 5 minutes when we sit up to do our practice, but then are we Satan as soon as we stand up? Some days.
Some days, yeah. I can't lie.
Are you less agitated and disturbed with your life since you started your practice? These are questions that we should go back to.
Can
when you are worried, how long does it last? How quickly can you regain your cheerfulness and your equilibrium? And remember, these are about being brutally honest but radically accepting. We have to know where we're at so we can know what we need to do to improve. And can you remain calm and balanced when you're in a sticky situation? So when karma comes knocking, how calm and balanced can you remain? So I want to, can I continue? Or,
One minute.
okay, yep, got it. Is it okay to start, or should I wait a minute more? Okay. So Swamiji says there are 4 reasons why your practice isn't working. So these things are: 1, your posture isn't right. That seems pretty straightforward, right? You go to sit down and you're all slumped, or you're going to sway back, or you're whatever it is. You know, something's happening with your posture, or you've got a knee that's sore and it's creating some instability in your posture. You've got your hip is something, whatever. Something's happening in the posture. He said constantly, head, neck, and trunk straight, right? In that theoretical straight line. At the very least, when we're rounded like this, we're just so disconnected. We're disconnected from the heart. We're feeling beaten. We're feeling like, oh, life is just too much. So first things first, if your posture's not gonna, if it's for example, you've got something really happening with your knee and hip and you can't sit in a comfortable cross-legged position, there are options. You can sit on the edge of a chair in Mayatri pose. You can sit, we can get you on a bench. We can Kaylee knows this. We've had her on blocks for a while so that she can sit with her legs folded back because something's been going on with her hip. So if something's not working, it's better to use something else so that you can stay in that theoretical straight line until you get back to your posture. Because if you're creating this effort of like, oh, I've got to hold this leg straight and it's really fighting you, that discomfort's going to create a lot of problems for you during the practice time. So if there's something happening with your posture, at the very least, go to sit on the edge of a chair, feet flat on the floor, so you can elongate the spine. There's something that, so the posture, never underestimate the importance of your seated posture. It's more important than what, Swamiji wouldn't have said it every lecture multiple times if it wasn't so important. The second thing is that you've had some bad food. In the sense that, Swamiji would say, you sit down for meditation and you create foul smells. When you sit down for meditation, if you are burping or you feel this indigestion or you feel gas or whatever it is, think about what you've had to eat. Because it's got to come out. And that's going to create some imbalance as well, too. If you eat too late at night, if you eat really greasy food, all of this, we have to digest everything. So be mindful of the food that be mindful. This is a really good way for you to start examining your practice. If I get up in the morning, first of all, when I wake up, am I sluggish? Connect that to what did I eat last night? Did I eat a whole pizza, even if it was the wheat penny pizza with the cashew ricotta? It could make you feel very sluggish. And we've all had this experience, right? When we have our Thanksgiving meal here, we all feel a little sluggish afterwards, as opposed to when we just do a light breakfast meal here. It's totally different.
Do we do light?
I think we did. I know there have been lighter meals.
Lighter, yeah, I'll take that.
Well, when we had the one, we learned from this one pretty quickly, right? When it was just all sweets.
Yeah.
Oh, that was rough.
That was a fail.
They were so good.
They were so good.
But then afterwards, you're just feeling miserable afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's why one of the reasons, we do a light, when I was living at the ashrams and stuff, you have a very light dinner before you go to the evening lectures. So when we do the songs on Saturdays with Swamiji, we have light snacks so that you can sit there and actually listen. Could you imagine having the Thanksgiving meal and then going to sit for a lecture? Oh, brutal. So be mindful of the food that you consume. The other thing, I don't have it up there. Okay. You have some sort of mental agitation. And this could be, I found that when I first learned this, and I don't even remember how long ago it was, but when we are excited by something or we have anxiety about something, the physiological response is almost exactly the same. That's something to be really mindful of. We think, oh, that excitement is good, but you have the same physiological response as when you're like, oh, and you're worried and you're fretting about something. The mind starts to think about it, and then we start, we have this anticipation for something, or we have this worry about something. But that when we are excited or we're in a state of anxiety, the body reacts physiologically the same way. But we justify these emotions that make us perceive to be happy. They are just as dangerous as the ones that pull us down. Because remember, however high you go, that's exactly how low you're going to go. It's not fun. I don't know if any of you have ever had any experience with anyone who's been bipolar. I have. And it's rough. It's rough to watch them. It's rough to be around them. But we're all bipolar to a certain degree. If I get this excited, I have to go down, and if this is my line right here, right? And I go this high, then when I fall, I'm gonna go that low. We want to stay constant. We want to stay consistent with our emotions. And if I get this high, guess what? I'm going to go that low. So just be mindful of when you're sitting down. And this is where when you sit down, really just see if you can focus on listening to the mantra as opposed to just trying to repeat the mantra or, so hum or whatever it is that you are repeating. And trust me, I know that you can hear. I've had dreams before that I'm listening to something in my head. I'm not repeating it. And it was, at that point, it was like, oh, that's what listening is. You can listen to it. It's not you trying to put this effort into repeating it. We have to get to that place. But so just be mindful of what it is. And same thing, if you're really struggling with the mind and the mind has all these agitations, perhaps it's better to walk away from the practice at that point in time and then come back later when you feel mentally more settled. So if you say your practice time is at 5 and you get up and at 5:45 you're still struggling or 5:15 or whatever, you're just so anxious about something, it's better to get up, get settled, and come back to it. But you've committed to being up at that certain time, so do it, try it. But because once again, if you're putting a lot of effort, it's going to create a lot of discomfort. And then what kind of relationship do you cultivate with your practice? It's miserable. I'm sitting here and I can't do this and I'm thinking about this and I'm fidgeting and I'm twitching and da-da-da-da. We want to develop love for our practice so that gets us back every morning doing our practice so that we are happier, we are more compassionate, not to just ourselves but to every being out there. The last one is irregular flow of breath. And this is something I think that it's really important for us to think about. When your left nostril is more dominant, you think differently than when your right nostril is more dominant. When your right nostril is more dominant, you think differently than your left nostril being more dominant. We want eventually to have that constant, that the currents to be balanced between the left and the right. So when we're talking left and right side, we're talking Ida and Pingala. Ida left, Pingala right. So we want that, but Swamiji would do it for weeks at a time. He would put something up his nose on one side and watch the way his mind worked. Be your own scientist.
Yeah.
Do it. If you don't have weeks to do it for a day and see what happens. Things happen. You find yourself thinking very differently when one side is more dominant. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you might find that there's some real ugly thoughts that start to surface. Because the left side is, so when we think about the left side, we think about the Ida, we think about the moon, but we think about tamas. And so in the right side is rajas. And tamas are those heavy emotions, that laziness, that dullness, that ignorance, that a tamasic, if you're really, so we're supposed to switch balance every 90 minutes or so, but that doesn't always happen based on our personalities. This is where yoga is amazing because and that is, so be mindful, right, of so if you're feeling like you're going into this really down period where you're feeling really just like, oh, life is a burden, see what's happening with your nose holes. Bring some awareness to them. Right side is that Rajasic energy. That energy where you're so active and you always have to be active and you're constantly looking for the next thing to bring you enjoyment. You're constantly looking for the next party, or you're constantly looking for the next shopping trip, or you're constantly looking for, and because you're always looking for the next thing, you're not enjoying anything that's really happening. So and you're greedy for those experiences. You're greedy, I want this, I want that, because that's going to make me happier. If I get Phil's green shirt, and I have the experience of wearing his green shirt, it's going to make me happier than wearing my black shirt. So you have this always wanting and reaching for everything. So the Rajasic person, they just can never be, they're always seeking pleasure, constantly. So we always, and you could have this like, it's not like we're always one side, right? I mean, just start being mindful of yourself. Start being mindful. This is part of that test. When I see myself as being greedy, where I want something more, check my right side. Has it been that way for a little bit? The other thing to be really mindful of, if you're pretty aware of the nasal dominance, if one side starts to become blocked for a longer period of time, chances are your immune system is getting compromised and you're fighting something too. So it's better so if like my right side or my left side is really blocked, I want to lie on my right side. And I want to put my fist in my armpit. So I want to do opposite sides to try to get it open. So there's these tricks, but a lot of times after you practice this for a while, mentally you can just have that awareness and it starts to open itself. Just bringing that awareness, like, so if just quickly feel, maybe you're aware of which side feels more dominant now, or maybe you need to use the fingers to figure out which is more dominant. And then you can just mentally, or you can sit here. So if my left side's more dominant, or my right side, maybe I want to put my left fist in my right armpit. And that can you don't have to do it lying down, you can do it sitting up. Maybe it's just bringing that mental awareness to it, and you can hear this little pop. And then suddenly it's like, oh, yeah, and you can feel that. So we want that, so this is that Rajasic. One of the best ways I heard Tamasic, Rajasic, and Sattvic energy described was, Tamasic is, if you're running backwards. And if the goal is to have that balance, the goal is to have that equilibrium, that peace, that contentment. If you're Tamasic, you're running away from it. You're running backwards because you're so dull. The Tamasic person has a hard time remembering anything. The Tamasic person is that person that wants to sleep all the time. They're completely content sitting on the couch. A Rajasic energy is that energy, you're running, but you're running in place. And you're running like crazy, but you're just running in place. You've got sweat profusely pouring down you and everything is happening, but you're just standing there running. The Sattvic energy is where we start to actually move forward. So you want to, and you can't go from the Tamasic energy into the Sattvic energy. You have to go through the Rajasic energy. So, it could be that you think about, you're sitting there and you're wanting to just stay on the couch. And you're like, well, I know that I need to balance this. So maybe you do some stuff to try to get the right side open. And then maybe you do something, well, if I clean my meditation space, that's more Rajasic Sattvic energy. So let me get up and do that instead of sitting here and brooding over something. But you have to know yourself. You have to examine yourself. You have to examine the breath flow with the way that you think. They all connect. It's really fascinating. Like Kaylee said, we have a silent Sunday coming up. Stick something up the nose all day one side and see what happens. If you come in really pissy, we're going to know when you come in for potluck. We'll know, oh, did you have that nose hole blocked? But So the sattvic energy is that energy that wants us to move forward. We want that peace. We want to do things that create peace. We want to do things that create this commitment to ourselves for peace and tranquility. So if you think about this with the Ramayana, we anybody who's listened to it or read it?
Talking about like Ravana?
Ravana, his two brothers.
Kumbhakarna. And
Vibhishana. So Ravana, which would Ravana be if we look at the gunas?
Rajasic.
Rajasic, yeah. Ravana is very Rajasic. He wants power and ruling over. You're not good, you're not bad, you're a human being that is not finished. We need to work and access our higher traits, our higher qualities, so that we can move forward.
But Vibhishana is not really considered the bad guy.
No, he's sattvic.
Yeah, he's on Ram's team, right?
Yeah, he's that sattvic energy, but he lived with demons. And then he left.
The sister is more...
Shrupa, yeah.
She's like Rajasic.
Yeah, she's very Rajasic.
Yeah.
She wants more. She wants
Ram.
I love that some of them have Ram and Lakshman just bantering back with each other.
Yeah.
I love the Ramayanas that do that. It's really, they're like, no, you're just too great for me. You need to go to my brother. And they just keep going back and forth. It's quite entertaining. But so think about, because Vibhishana left. And he went because he is that sattvic energy. And now, so think about, like I said, all of these things in your practice. Think about your daily life. Your food, is it Rajasic? Is it Tamasic? Is it sattvic? Your sleeping patterns, what you watch, who you hang out with, everything you do. Is it Rajasic? Is it Tamasic? Is it sattvic? Make a list and go through it and really start examining those things. You need to do your own introspection. Because then when you do, then you start to develop more discrimination. Oh, this isn't good for me. Why would I do this? Kind of thing.
Is their goal to balance them all or to overcome Tamas and Rajas and only have sattvic energy?
You need this tamasic energy. Tamasic energy is that stability. I need to sleep at night. So I need that tamas inside of me to help me sleep at night. Rajasic, I need that Rajasic energy because that gets me up to going. And so if your sattvic balance, if your sattvic is really out of balance, you can be kind of airy, kind of spacey. When I lived in Iowa, they would say, oh, they're vata imbalanced. And they were implied because they were so much out of their body. That wasn't the case. They were, but you can become really, you can just become kind of airy when it's like Neem Karoli Baba, and he was a saint, but like, Swamiji took him around 40 different places, and he's like, have I taken food? And Swamiji would say, oh, you're hungry. He's like, okay, let me eat. Or then he would say, no, you're not hungry. And then he's like, okay, I'm fine. Because he's just completely disconnected from this. But if you don't have a balance of tamasic energy, how are you going to sleep at night? So you want it while we're here, but eventually we want to move away from all of them. Because that's not, the gunas aren't who we are either, right? We are an aspect, the soul is who we are. So we want to eventually move away from those as well. But how can I move towards sattvic energy if I'm constantly running after the next pleasure? So, if I'm run after peace. Run after contentment. What is it that's going to make me more peaceful in all situations? What's going to make me more content? If you have to run after something, run after that. There's a story that Panditji, who is Rajmani Tikkanite at the Institute, he told that one of his relatives, I want to say a cousin, but don't quote me on that, I just know it was a relative, they had this beautiful dream about Hanuman. And Hanuman came to visit them, and Hanuman came in, and Hanuman was, they offered Hanuman tea in their very fancy china set. And they were just so like, oh, wow, this is, Hanumanji is here, and I'm giving Hanumanji this tea. And then Hanumanji got to get up, or was ready to leave, and was walking out with the teacup. And this person in the dream said, Hanumanji, don't take my teacup. And that is something like when we think about, this goes back to our practice, right? This goes back to how attached are we to the little things? If you haven't done this practice, I highly recommend it. And it's not a practice that you stop. It's a practice that you keep going with. It's a practice of every night, give back to God what is God's. And guess what is God's? Everything. Give back to God. God, if you want me to have this house tomorrow, I will have this house. Give back the attachments that you have. God, if you want me to be a mother tomorrow, my kids will be here. If you want me to be a daughter, my mother will be here. If you want me to have a car, my car will be here. If you want me to have hair, my hair will be here. All of these things that we are attached to aren't ours. They belong to God. But we cling to them, and we want that. I want my teacup back. Why? It's not yours. Why do you deserve it back? It's not yours. So every night before you sleep, give back to God what is God's. And maybe you can't start with the big things. Maybe you can't say, God, if I'm supposed to be a mother tomorrow, my boys will be here. Maybe you start with the little things. God, if I'm supposed to have socks tomorrow, have socks. So start with the little things and build up. But you have to mean it.
Can I ask a question? Is that the same as like the niyama of Ishwara?
So surrendering to God, this would be the same as like you're not greedy.
Okay.
But you are surrendering it to God. Yeah, ultimately we surrender everything to God.
So it's the same concept, just a little different though. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, just give it. I mean, you can't let's give it all back to God. But those things that start with attachments, start with those little things and give it back to the fire. Let it just burn it. And if you're supposed to have it, God will make sure that you have it. And the same thing, if you're not supposed to have it, you're not going to have it. I don't care how much you may pine for it. If you're not supposed to have it, you will not have it. That's the bottom line. So, okay, I think it's really just important to think about your practice and how you're progressing, and think about when you sit down, contemplate if it was a rough practice, think about those 4 qualities that could make it a rough practice for you. And what can you do to alleviate that? Maybe it is as simple as sitting in a different posture. Maybe it is as simple as eating a different way. Whatever it is, but you have to be mindful of yourself. Because what can we really surrender to God if we don't even know who we are? So that's where it does start, starting with those little things. Okay, so now we'll move into, so the last, on the last episode of the Ramayana, Sati had burned herself. So Sati she consumed herself with fire. And Sati is that relative ego, or the relative intellect, that we want to be praised for what we know. We want that adoration. We want that, oh, look how much I know about art, or look how much I know about yoga, or look how much I know about music. Look how much I know. We want that praise and adoration for what we know. That, at some point, we have to surrender that, because that's egoic. That is Daksha, her father. And at some point, the daughter has to disobey the father. But so we have that place where we realize that worldly knowledge, what's it going to do for us? At the time of death, does it matter who won the Grammy Awards? Does it matter who won the Super Bowl? Does it matter who was the 15th president? I mean, really, does it matter? When you're dying, are you going to say, oh my gosh, who was the 15th president? Don't call me, because I won't tell. I don't know. I should know, but I don't know. Is it going to matter? Any of these things that we think are so pertinent for us to know right now, at the time of your death, are you really going to be calling on that information? No, you're not. If you're puzzled about the answer, I'll tell you no. So that is because we want that ego praise. This is that thing. Don't do anything where you're seeking applause. It can be anything from wearing something that you want someone to acknowledge. Oh, you look nice today. It could be making food and wanting people to compliment the food that you make. Making a piece of artwork and wanting people to compliment the piece of art that you make. Delivering the mail on time and wanting the folks to say, oh, you're the best mailman we've ever had. So all of these things that we do for applause, that's stroking the relative intellect, and that's stroking our ego. So Sati has burned herself. She's burned herself. And her last thought was that she wanted to come back where she could love Shiva more. Shiva is the individual soul. Shiva is that, in this part of the story, right? Shiva represents the individual soul. Shiva is part of the Trinity, the destruction. But anyway, so she wants to come back where she can serve the soul. That's her goal. That was her last thought. So when she comes back now, she comes back as Uma, who is the daughter of Himavat, the protector and guardian of the Himalayas. And she starts very young. She starts at age 5 with her austerities. Some scars run deep, right? So she starts at age 5 with her austerities. And Narada comes to visit her parents, and he's looking at Uma, and he's saying, wow, she's going to be known as the mother of the universe. She has every beautiful quality. And she is going to marry. And I wrote this down because I think this is I like this. So Shiva completely married, guess what? That's when we drop the unconscious mind. And that's when we become liberated. So of course we want those two to marry. Of course we want to marry our soul. Of course, the soul is an aspect of God. Do you think the soul has desires? No. Do you think the soul forms thoughts? No, the mind forms thoughts. The soul is perfect. This is when you hear people say, oh, he's got to do soul work. The soul's an aspect of God, so God has to do work? No, God doesn't have to do work. We humans, we're the unfinished business here. We have to do the work. We have to burn the relative intellect. We have to burn the ego. Then we can marry the soul. But the soul is without form. The soul is more than anything. The soul, then we put these little small things, these attributes on God. Oh, God has favorites. God judges. God does this. God does that. God is fair. God is just. God is righteous. All these other things, we put those attributes on God because we put them on ourselves. If I am good, then Phil is bad. If Lisa is good, oh, I'm bad. Let me sit here for meditation. Feeling all dejected, all beaten like a puppy. We want to get rid of all of those things so that we can marry the soul. That's where we're headed. So when that happens, she starts, Uma, with these, and then when she hears this prediction from Narada and stuff, she's like, I'm all in. So she leaves the palace, she goes into the forest, into the Himalayas, and she begins to live on just roots and fruits. And then she begins from that, she just consumes leaves. And then from the leaves, she just consumes air. So she has this fire of austerities, of tapas, right? She has this fire, but don't think about it like any of us could go on a fast for 30 days or 40 days and become really emaciated. What this is illustrating is that she is fasting from the worldly things. She's letting go of the worldly things. She's becoming austere as far as the world is concerned. She's becoming austere. For us, we could think of austerity as not having a TV. We could think of austerity as not watching YouTube videos. We could think of austerity as going to bed between 9 and 10 every night. It's not becoming so emaciated that, we're waif-like. We're walking around like a bag of bones. No, we are wanting to remove ourselves from the world. Because why should we be stuck in the world that keeps dragging us into this turmoil? Has anyone ever been in a situation where you've been fighting with someone and that person is angry and you come in just as angry and just as hot?
Oh, yeah. No one else. Come on.
It doesn't resolve, right?
No.
It doesn't resolve. Because hate will never get rid of hate. This is why activism doesn't work. My side is right. My side is right. My side is right. My side is right. So you have these sides just bashing and not listening, not giving, not understanding. So activism will never. This is why social reform lasts best a decade. And then we're doing the same damn thing over again. We're having the same issues over again. We need inner transformation. And when we transform inside of ourselves, then we can be a light to the world. Until then, we're just stuck. So this is why we have to do the practice. So think of these austerities as not living on roots and fruits, but think of these austerities of what in the world do you really need to participate in? And be mindful of it. So when you participate it, when you're watching some show, or you're watching some YouTube video, or you're watching some TikTok channel, and then afterwards, be mindful of how you feel. Do you feel rajasic? Do you have that energy? Do you feel tamasic? Do you like, oh, I'm so tired now? Or do you feel inspired to go out and do something? Not just inspired, but you actually do something with it. Right? We can go to church, or we can go to the synagogue or the temple, and we can feel inspired, but if we don't do anything with it, what's the point? So this inspiration lasted for 15 minutes, or it lasted until I got home and saw my neighbor didn't bring their trash cans in. Damn it, Wheezy. Why didn't you bring the trash cans in? So how long does your inspiration last? And examine that. What can I do so that I actually do something sattvic with it? Swami Satchidananda says, right, if you feel this lift of love and you're in your house, go tend to your plants. Go clean up something. Go do something lovingly. Go, but if you feel this anger, don't put your pot down with that same anger that you're feeling. We have to be more mindful of what's happening inside here so that we can have more harmony with what we do outside of ourselves. So at this point, when Uma, when she has done her austerities, she has this, they come forward and they're saying things like, oh, why would you marry Shiva? He's this and he's that, and he has dreadlocks and he has a snake and all this other stuff they're doing. They're saying all this other stuff. And a couple of the versions that I've read, I always like this. She said, basically, it is one thing to say something negative. It is one thing to gossip. It is another thing to listen to it. And I turn my backs to you. I will not listen to you. Isn't that right?
Solid.
Yeah. It's something for us to think about, because if you are listening to someone gossip, if you're listening to someone complain, you're giving them the okay to do it. So instead of gathering around the water tank to gossip or whatever it may be, walk away from it. Don't let your ears burn with that. So at the point that she is now consumed with her austerity, she's consumed with this whole, what she is doing, right? With this consumption that she's going to be married to Shiva. At that point, right? So Sati has been completely burned. Sati is now completely, there's no remnant left inside of her, of Uma. She's gone. Because she's now completely consumed. That intuitive intellect is there. There's no more relative. There's no more, you may know things. It doesn't mean that you know things, that you don't know things, right? But you're not concerned with it. You are mindful of what you want to think. This is where even the devil can quote scriptures. You want to have the knowledge of the scriptures. So it's not just a matter of quoting things. You have the knowledge of what the scriptures mean when you do it. So at that point, then Uma is there, and Sati is completely gone. And I think that's pretty much it for today.
So can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
If we're thinking about it like,
Mm-hmm.
right, would the gossip of talking negatively about Shiva, would that be like your own negative thinking and not listening to that own negative thought about your own self and being like, well, that's just stupid and don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's like saying.
Yeah, inside of yourself as well. Yeah,
Right.
but and then inside and outside, right? Whatever's inside is outside of ourselves. So yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So you don't want to, and this is the other thing that, we spend so much time being mean to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
that when I sit down to do my practice, how could I possibly make any progress if I think I'm this evil, vile, wretched human? You know, so yeah, don't talk negative about yourselves. What is it Swamiji says? God loves you, I love you, but you don't love you. We have to love ourselves. And when we love ourselves, guess what? Then we start to love everyone else. Because we see ourselves in everyone. So when we have that, this is the last satsang, right? It's no more of this, the separate, it's this. So how can I be mean to someone else because they're part of me? My right hand does not hate my left hand. And my left hand does not hate my right hand. They work together. There's no animosity in my mind towards either one of those. But yeah, we have to cultivate that love for ourselves. So don't listen to yourself. If you find yourself being negative about yourself, this goes back to the very first thing that we were talking about. You must be brutally honest, but you must be radically accepting. So, okay, I know that I'm still working on some anger issues in this lifetime. Okay, I know that. So what am I going to do to work on that? What am I going to do if I think of myself as this horrible, rotten person because I have this? If I think of myself as this horrible, rotten person because I know so little, what's the point? I know so little. That's okay. I don't need to hide the fact that I don't know so much. I don't need to, but we spend time, right, trying to hide who we are because we're not brutally honest, and we're not when that being brutally honest does not mean that we're belittling ourselves. It means that we're being radically accepting of ourselves. Okay, this is what I got to do. This is what I got to do to fight that rajasic energy in myself. This is what I have. Make a plan for it. This is how I'm going to move. And it doesn't mean that I have to meet with 100% success every time. Sometimes we go down with the ship, don't we, Lexa? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Next time we make a resolve to not go down with the ship, and we become more determined to not go down with the ship. But if I'm already feeling so small because I've been belittling myself, then damn, I don't really have a shot here. So yeah, don't listen to gossip about yourself or others.